This is the Lex Beyond podcast by Lexicon Labs. I'm Lex.
And I'm Bianca. Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to picture a scenario. You're on your couch, phone in hand.
Yep.
You open an app, and it looks incredibly sleek. You know, dark mode, neon charts, very tech. It sits right next to your stock trading app, your crypto wallet. But this app, it isn't asking you to buy shares.
No, it's asking you a question. A very clean, very binary question.
Exactly, just yes or no. Will the Fed cut rates next month?
Will the government shut down on Friday?
Will this specific bill pass Congress? And you can put real money on that yes or no. If you've been scrolling through, say, tech Twitter or reading any financial news lately, you have almost certainly bumped into this.
Oh, it's everywhere right now. And there's this narrative being pushed very aggressively about a brand new asset class.
And the pitch is seductive, isn't it? They don't call it betting.
No, of course not. They call it prediction markets. Or, if they want to sound really sophisticated at a dinner party, it's event contracts.
Right, event contracts.
Yeah.
The idea is that technology has finally unlocked a way for you to take a position on, well, on the outcome of reality itself. It's framed as this revolutionary financial tool.
A way to harness the wisdom of the crowds to see what's going to happen. It feels futuristic. It feels like the next logical step.
It really does. But, and this is where we have to pump the brakes a bit, we've been looking through Lexicon Labs notes on this, and the research suggests this revolution, it's not exactly new.
No, that was maybe the biggest surprise for me, digging into this.
We aren't talking about an innovation from 2024. We aren't even talking about the 20th century.
Not even close.
So give us a sense of scale here. Just how old is this concept we're talking about?
You need to be thinking in millennia. I mean, if you strip away the app, the blockchain jargon, all the Silicon Valley marketing, you realize we're just repeating a cycle.
A cycle that's thousands of years old.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for us today? That's the mission for this deep dive. We're going to debunk the whole novelty of these markets.
We're going on a little trip through time.
Yeah, we're starting in ancient Babylonia, then jumping to the coffee houses of 17th century England and landing right back here.
And we have a specific goal with that journey. We want to see how risk sharing, which is a vital economic tool, how it quietly mutates into wagering.
Yeah.
Because there is a very, very thin line between the two.
And history shows us that whenever we blur that line, things can get messy.
Very messy.
So we're going to find out if this so-called financial innovation is actually just the oldest form of gambling in a very slicked disguise. All right, let's fire up the time machine. First up, ancient Babylon.
Okay.
I was reading through the lexicon research, and I kept tripping over this one word. Bottomry.
Bottomry.
Yeah.
Bottomry. Yeah, so it sounds, well, it just sounds a bit odd to our modern ears.
It sounds like something you'd get sent to the principal's office for. Stop that bottomry right now. But apparently, this is the great-great-grandfather of the prediction market.
In a way, yes. But to understand it, you have to picture the context. We're talking about incredibly high-stakes trade. Desert caravans, wooden ships sailing across the Mediterranean.
This was high-risk, high-reward stuff. No GPS, no satellite phones. If you were a ship owner in Babylon, you had a huge problem. You needed money to fund the trip.
To buy the goods, feed the crew, pay the guards, all of it.
Huh.
But the trip itself was just incredibly dangerous.
Storms, bandits, shipwrecks.
The odds of a total loss were very, very real. So the Babylonians developed this clever contract. It's essentially a risk contingent loan.
Okay, break that down for me. Risk contingent. How does the money actually work?
So let's say you are the ship owner. You want to sail to a distant port for spices. I'm a lender. I give you a bag of silver to fund your voyage. But here's the catch, and this is the crucial part. The loan is secured by the voyage itself.
So if my ship hits a rock and goes down.
If the ship sinks or the caravan gets lost in the desert, I get nothing. Zero. You don't have to pay me back a single shekel. The debt is forgiven.
Wow, okay. That is a pretty sweet deal for me. But it sounds terrible for you as the lender. I mean, why would you ever agree to that?
Because if the voyage succeeds and you come back loaded with spices and gold, I get my principal back, plus a massive amount of interest. A huge premium that reflects the danger I took on.
I see. So you're basically betting on my survival.
Scholars, they tend to view this less as pure gambling and more as a primitive form of marine insurance. Or maybe what we call a catastrophe bond today.
So you're acting as the insurer.
I'm bearing the risk of loss so that you can go and conduct real economic activity. The money I gave you is actually being used for something productive.
That makes sense. It's financing trade. But here's the question that popped into my head reading the notes. Could just anyone do this? Like, let's say there's a guy in Babylon named Steve. He has nothing to do with my boat. Can Steve stand on the sidelines and just bet on whether the boat sinks?
That is the million-shekel question, right?
Yeah.
And the lexicon notes point out that there isn't a specific surviving tablet that says, speculator Steve bets on the fate of Trader A's caravan.
So no ancient sports books for caravans.
Not explicitly, but, and this is important, historians see no real legal barrier to it. If you had the silver and you were willing to take on that risk, you could be a lender.
And since the lender only got paid if the voyage succeeded.
They were functionally speculating on the outcome. But the key distinction here seems to be skin in the game.
Precisely. In Babylon, the risk was tied to the venture. The lender was helping a real voyage happen. They weren't just betting on a line on a chart. They were funding the actual ship. The risk sharing was productive.
It helped the economy grow.
Okay, so Babylon gives us legitimate risk sharing. It's a tool for trade. Now, let's fast forward a few thousand years to 17th and 18th century England, the era of powdered wigs, coffee houses.
And this is where the story shifts dramatically. This is the moment where that risk-sharing concept we saw in Babylon, it quietly mutates into outright wagering.
And the catalyst, again, was insurance, right?
Yes. By the late 1600s, England had marine insurance, centered around the famous Lloyd's Coffee House, and they had fire insurance. These were useful, necessary things.
Right. If your warehouse burned down, you didn't lose everything.
But then they introduced life insurance.
And according to the research, this is where it immediately just went off the rails.
Completely off the rails.
Yeah.
Because people realized something very, very quickly. You didn't just have to insure your own life or your family's. The law at the time didn't stop you from buying a policy on anyone.
This part of the notes actually shocked me. It says people were buying policies on complete strangers.
Strangers, celebrities, anyone you could think of.
So if I'm in a London coffee house in, say, 1720, I could buy an insurance policy on a famous politician.
Absolutely. Or on a notorious criminal who was awaiting trial.
Wait, so you're betting on whether he gets executed?
Essentially, yes. It became a mania. They were taking out policies on elderly aristocrats, public officials, even the king. Imagine walking into a broker's office and seeing odds posted on whether the king would survive his current illness.
That's not insurance, that's a death pool.
That is exactly what it was. A prediction market on mortality. And this is where we have to look at the consequences. When you let people trade on the outcome of an event they have no real connection to, you introduce moral hazard.
Right, because if I hold a huge insurance policy on a stranger's death, I'm probably not sending them get-well-soon cards.
You might even be tempted to ensure the payout happens. There were genuine fears that this financial innovation was encouraging murder.
Wow.
But even beyond the crime aspect, there was just this huge public disgust. Society recoiled at it. It felt grotesque to have people openly gambling on the mortality of others in the name of finance.
So how did they stop it? Because obviously I can't go buy a life insurance policy on a celebrity today.
No, if you could, the paparazzi would probably be running hedge funds.
Right.
The legal system had to step in. And the fix was a Life Assurance Act of 1774. It introduced a concept that is still the bedrock of insurance law today: insurable interest.
Okay, define that for us. What exactly is insurable interest?
It's actually very simple. To insure a life, you must suffer a direct financial loss if that person dies. So you can insure your spouse because you lose their income. You can insure a business partner or a debtor who owes you money.
But I can't insure the king.
No, because the king's death, while sad, doesn't cost you money personally. Curiosity, fame, or just a hunch that he's not long for this world, those are not valid grounds for insurance.
So that law drew a really hard line in the sand.
A very hard line. On one side, you have legitimate risk sharing where you're protecting against a real loss. On the other side, you have synthetic gambling where you're just trying to profit from an event that doesn't concern you.
And that distinction is so important. In Babylon, the lender lost money if the ship sank. In 18th century England, the gambler made money if the stranger died.
Exactly. And that shift from protection to pure speculation is the heart of the issue we are seeing today.
Which brings us right to the present. Let's jump from the London coffee house to the Silicon Valley boardroom. We have platforms like Kalshi, Polymarket, and they are using very specific language.
Oh, very specific. They describe themselves as regulated exchanges for trading on future events.
Right. They talk about inflation, Fed rates, government shutdowns. It all sounds very serious, very Wall Street.
The pitch is that it's a way for businesses to hedge their risks on policy changes.
But when we look at the actual data in Lexicon's notes, the picture is, well, it's different.
It is vastly different. There is an elephant in the room, and it is wearing a football jersey.
Sports.
Sports. Despite all the high-minded talk about economic indicators, the data shows that roughly 80 to 90% of the volume on a platform like Kalshi is sports-related.
80 to 90%.
Yes, that is the bulk of the activity. And while Polymarket has historically had more political volume because of the election cycle, the notes point out they've only recently entered the U.S. sports event market. The trend is clear.
This feels like a bait and switch, like they're selling it as a Bloomberg terminal, but what you're really getting is a DraftKings account.
It's a branding strategy. It's regulatory arbitrage. If you go to a regulator and say, I want to open a sports betting site, you get put in one bucket. You deal with gambling commissions, vice laws.
Right. You're a casino.
But if you say, I am building a financial exchange for hedging economic risk, you get put in a whole other bucket. You talk to CFTC, you get treated like the stock market.
So the industry is trying very hard to keep sports out of the serious conversation.
It's to maintain this veneer of being a financial tool. But functionally,
Sports betting.
functionally, they are plugging standard sports gambling, which, let's remember, the Romans were doing with chariot races, into federal exchange infrastructure. It's synthetic risk,
Yeah.
just like the English death pools.
You aren't hedging anything when you bet on the Super Bowl. You're wagering.
Exactly.
You know, this reminds me of a quote that was included in the research. It's from Coinbase CEO Brian Armstrong. He's a huge proponent of these markets.
I know the one you mean. It's a very common defense.
He said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, that if you look at things like elections or economic data, 99% of people use prediction markets just to figure out what is going to happen next month.
Like checking the news.
Yeah, and only 1% actually trade it as an asset class. He's arguing it's an information tool, a competitor to traditional media.
Right. The value is in the data it produces.
Right.
But the lexicon notes call this, and I think it's the right word, gaslighting.
Why so?
Because logically, it just doesn't hold up. Think about the mechanics for a second. If your goal is just to know the probability of an event, to get the information,
Yeah.
you just look at the price.
Right. If the contract for Fed rate hike is trading at 60 cents, the market thinks there's a 60% chance. I can see that for free. I don't need to create an account or deposit money.
Exactly. You don't need to buy the contract to get the information. The price is the information. If you are actually buying the contract, if you're putting money down, you are not seeking information.
You're betting.
You're betting. You are speculating that the market is wrong and you can make a profit.
So saying 99% of people just use it for info.
It's a way to distract from the fact that the engine of the machine, the thing that actually makes the price move, is gambling. It's a deliberate strategy to frame this as information seeking, to avoid the scrutiny that comes with running a massive federally regulated casino.
Because if everyone just looked at the price, the market wouldn't exist. There'd be no trading.
There'd be no liquidity, nothing.
It's really wild when you lay it out like that. We've gone from Babylon, where risk was real and tied to a boat, to 18th century England, where risk became synthetic and dangerous, and now we've looped right back to synthetic risk, but we've given it a tech makeover.
And we've expanded the menu. In England, it was just lives. Now it's everything: sports, politics, economics, the weather. But the fundamental mechanism, it hasn't changed at all.
We are taking a 2,000-year-old gambling tool, dressing it up as a shiny new asset class, and pretending the gambling part doesn't really exist.
It's the death pool logic applied to the Super Bowl and the Federal Reserve. And just like back then, this raises serious questions about utility. If 90% of the activity is just people betting on sports, do we really need to treat this as some breakthrough in financial technology?
Or should we just call it what it is?
Right.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? I guess next time you see a headline about event contracts or the revolutionary power of prediction markets, just remember this history. You're looking at a very, very old idea.
And remember the lesson from 1774. Societies eventually draw lines between helpful risk sharing and harmful wagering. We are currently in a phase where that line is just incredibly blurry.
The technology has outpaced the regulation, just like life insurance did in 1720.
The tech narrative wants you to believe this is the future of finance. The history books suggest it's just the past repeating itself, only with better graphics.
And as the lexicon notes rather ominously warn us at the end, this won't end well.
Or at least, historically, these kinds of bubbles of synthetic gambling, they usually pop in a pretty messy way.
On that cheery note, thank you for diving deep with us today. It's always fascinating to see how the newest things are often just the oldest things in a new coat.
Absolutely. History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.